Just tell us.
And there we are. I'm telling you. Hey! Well, what is this? 3 screens on the battlefield. Let's call it the battlefield right now. Welcome to Talking Void. Welcome to TV. I recently got someone saying, "Oh, TV, it's Talking Void." Yeah, that's the fun of it. And we have the Precipice of Dreams, which is POD, which is a podcast. So there we go. Anyway.
And we have parallel projections, which is PP, which is also funny, but maybe only to me.
I think so. But who is this guy sitting at the right side of your screen? Welcome. Dungeon Master Dave. I've called you Dungeon Master Dave because I think that's funny. And now we will not confuse you with Swiss Dave or even Blonde Dave, as I recently got to know Reina. Right? I'm saying it right. Yeah,
we're going with a triple threat with Daves all around.
Yeah, all the Daves.
Yeah. So I'm Jasper Dave. This is Michel Dave. And that's DM Dave. Blonde Dave reporting for duty. Here, there we go. Chat is active. This is our special Careful Cantrip episode, and we really look forward to doing this. And the time has come to talk some with Dave. Let's just call you Dave now. Might be easier. And we'll be going into the topics after the socials and the introduction to the show. So we'll do that first. Everyone is Dave, says RAR78. Yeah, that's true as well. Let's talk some socials first. Michel, you want to do that?
Yeah. If you're watching right now, you already found us on Twitch. But all our previous episodes of this show, Talking Void, but also our main show, our live stream campaign, you can find on our YouTube channel. So if you haven't already, go there and you can watch all our previous episodes if you dig this right here. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook, where we post all our latest news and our artwork and other stuff, our behind the screens footage. And we have our own Discord server. So if you're into that, then come join us, hang out, talk to us about Dungeons and Dragons or anything you like. And that's it for social media. But while we're at it, we just introduced to Dave, the Dungeon Master of Careful Cantrip. So if you haven't already, then please go to the Careful Cantrip sites, social medias, and say hello there and subscribe, follow, and all that jazz. And with that, I'll throw it back to you, Jasper.
Well, you're pointing in the wrong way, I think.
Yeah, I know. That's because of the mirror image of the...
Yeah. Hello, my name is Jasper. I'm your host for this evening. What can I say? Let's go into the intro. That was a bit of a longer black screen because we like to talk.
Wow, the show is called Talking Void.
Oh yeah, we're Talking Void, which is, for me, Talking Void is about talking about scary things that live in the void, and it's about talking about nothing at all at the same time, which made and there's the connection to the precipice in a way. Love the noir aesthetic. Well, thank you, Ashley Gibson, and thank you for your comment on the Facebook, and we will be showing it this evening. I've now named your handle, which is about your name, and I shorten that in a... Well, anyway, here we go. It's always so strange to... most of the people are RAR78. I don't know who that is. And my handle, it is either Arana Marunda or it is Jasper Chong, because that's my name. And you can now look me up on wherever you want. Anyway... Going off script already.
You're gonna have stalkers following you from now on.
Yeah, I know. It's so exciting. Am I the guy that's getting stalkers? Well, that's okay. I think no, it's not okay. But anyway,
stalkers, fans. It's a loose transition, right?
Potato, potato.
Exactly.
Potato. Yeah. Subscribe. Yeah, well, thank you for being here. Love seeing you there, and we'll have an evening of it, right? So,
or an afternoon or a morning, depending on where
you
are.
It's evening here, but it's not where Dave is, right, Dave?
No, we're right in the middle of the afternoon here. Don't tell my boss.
I won't.
What's his number?
Good.
And I won't call it.
555
1308.
You have nothing to worry about, Dave. It's not like we're streaming this on the internet right now. So.
Yeah, really. It's not like this is public facing at all.
So let's talk about Careful Cantrip, because, well, you are on our show. So we should... this show is going to be a two-parter in a way. We will be discussing the Precipice of Dreams. We will not be discussing the Precipice of Dreams, only in relation to how we'll be talking about the main topic and maybe compare it to Careful Cantrip in some ways. How their experience is, how Dave's experience is, and then afterwards we will do the main topic. And for this evening, the main topic is what is the main topic? What
is the perfect combat encounter for you in Dungeons and Dragons?
In Dungeons and Dragons,
yes.
Yeah. So that's the main topic. Thank you, Michel. Bring it out there anyway. But let's first talk about Careful Cantrip. So, how has your experience been thus far, dear Sir Dave?
It's honestly been a very eye-opening experience for not just myself, but for the entire group. We really didn't know what to expect when we started this. We really did it on a whim. We thought, we had a lot of fun playing our game together. Me and the group have been playing for this particular group have been playing just under a year now. And we were playing another campaign before that. So we thought we'd give it a shot and see what would happen with it. And we're blown away by the community, by, specifically Voidcast. I mean, we were very, very small when we first started talking to you guys. And, with all the love that we've been receiving, it's been a wonderful experience so far. It's something that we thought, well, we'll take a shot at it, to something that we're really trying to put some time and energy into now. Probably the same for you guys in terms of the reception. It's amazing to think, why are people coming to watch my dumb face on Twitch? I really don't understand that, but no, it's been a lot of love. It's been a lot of love. That's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, when we had something similar when we just started out. You only have a few viewers, but then next time you stream, the same people are watching. And they're like, yeah, we take the time for this. It's like, we know every Monday evening we sit down on the couch and we watch Voidcast play the Precipice of Dreams. It's like, that's so cool.
Yeah.
It's crazy and cool.
One of our players actually got noticed in real life. And they said, "Oh, you're Alara. I know you. Yeah." And it was she was blown away by it in terms of having someone recognize her in real life as her character on Twitch. So it's that's a little
cool.
Surreal at that point. Yeah.
Whoa, that's very surreal.
Yeah.
Talking about possible stalkers in your future there. Yeah, I think it's funny because we had this idea. We had this idea for a long time as individuals, but then November last year, about a year ago, I talked to Michel and we said could we start such a thing? And I said, well, I've been thinking of it for such a long time. Let's do it. And then we got our group together, and then we really invested into seeing how we could make a good stream. And luckily for us, we have people here who can do different things. Like Michel is really good in music, and he's the one who cuts the introductions and everything. Then Erik is very good at art, and we were really building this. But then I went onto Twitch to see what we were competing against, and there were quite a lot of streams up there. If you clicked onto Twitch, there were
the Wild West of Dungeons and Dragons streams.
Wild West, yeah. And then you're starting to think, how can we make a difference, or will they be watching us because we're doing this in English and that isn't our native language even? Will that be a problem? And all these kind of things start to happen in your head, and then you say, let's just do it, and then you go on air, and then let's just do it anyway. And we've discussed this, and it's about fun first, because if we aren't having fun doing this, we are doing it wrong, or we shouldn't be doing it at all. And that's what drives us to have about the same kind of fun as we have at a live table, but it might be a bit different. Is that your experience as well, Dave, that it's a bit different than around the table?
So it's one thing I'd like to comment, and I do have a question for you actually after that, but it is very different in terms of not having people around the table. There's definite benefits and there's definite downfalls to it. It's nice to be able to sit around a table and hang out with your friends and, be able to move the minis across the table and everything along those lines. But the one thing that I like about all of this is the fact that I can utilize technology so much more efficiently within my games. When I want to put in sound effects of, the monster screaming, or I want to put specific music into it, it's much simpler, I find, to do it the way that it's set up with Twitch and doing everything online, as opposed to, fumbling around with your stereo or MP3 player at the table at that point. So I think that, you do lose that a little bit of that bond when you step away from the table itself.
True.
One thing that I wanted to mention is just in terms of the overall vast amount of D&D players that are out there right now, and I don't think we, either Careful Cantrip or Voidcast, fall into this category. Is that there are a lot of people out there who just kind of want to go online and try it out and jump onto the critical role money, if you will. Yeah. Can't say the CR word around here. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you can.
Oh yeah.
We're all great fans in a way.
Okay, good. That's good. But I find that they're not positioning it as a show. I mean, that's the one big difference I find with those who are building a successful brand for themselves. And I know we're getting a little bit into business talk now, but bear with me. There's a big difference between those who are trying to build a brand and recognize that this is, as much as we're playing the game, this is a production that we're putting on, where we have people, we have outside spectators. And, I can see it with Voidcast. We do it with Careful Cantrip. We're very particular in terms of our sound quality, of our picture quality, of the content that we're putting up. We're looking at it as much as a brand as we are the overall game, to say, okay, how are we actually giving value back to the community, whether that be through entertainment, whether that be through information and teaching things and having these kind of discussions like we're having right now. So where I do see there's a fair amount of people playing D&D online, there's a big difference between people who are just there to play the game and throw it on the computer versus those who are actually putting the effort in to make the show.
Yeah, I agree. I think the thing you noticed with Voidcast and with Careful Cantrip as well, that we are always trying to find new ways to improve things, improve the art, improve the sound quality. If you compare our first episode on YouTube to our last one, it's a major difference. And it's like so bad that I actually want to go back and remaster all the previous episodes, like turn the sound back up, put music in there, change the overlays and everything. Like I shouldn't. It's for history's sake. It's on there now, but
it also gives you a basis to be like, this is where we started from, and this is how far we've come. When you sit back and you're like, man, I wish the numbers might be higher, or I wish our subscriptions were a little bit higher, or whatever the case is, you can always look back and say, look how far we've come in the time we have.
Yeah,
true.
And you can find that, if you can find that sense of pride in just the work that you're doing, I think that's gonna motivate anyone to continue to keep moving forward.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, you're absolutely
well
right.
spoken. And the other thing is the community, because I think that's why we found you in a way. That we discovered that the community is the people who watch us, but it's also the other streamers who are really making an effort to broaden their scope and connect to like-minded individuals. And you see this when you watch your streams. You see it hopefully when you watch our streams, that we try to interact as not that much on the adventure, but on this show and on parallel projections that are two other shows, where things are being said in chat. I'm skipping a lot of them right now, but, and that really makes for the big difference, I think. We have seen other streamers, but we haven't felt that we're going to invite those streamers, because they are also tucked into their own little shell. And I think that if you want to succeed, not in a business-like manner, but would be great, but in building this community and growing, then this is the way.
Yeah, I don't see the success on Twitch being a ladder. I see it as stepping stones, and it's just moving back and forth to how can I produce the best content possible that will engage my viewers and allow them to join my community, rather than saying, yeah, I'm just going to throw up our games. Perfect example being our other two shows that we put on. We have the character building, which we've just released, as well as the world building. And really, that's there to say, hey, we want you to be part of our game. We want you to have your mark on the world, kind of thing. And I've named NPCs after some of our viewers. They've helped me build parts of the world that's and it's just a wonderful thing, because I can look back and be like, Sir Hawk helped me build that, or Six of Spades helped me create that character. And it's just this, it's this holistic view where it's kind of like, you're a part of this as much as we're a part of this.
Yeah, it's true. Like for me, I think
grow in that corner of what we are doing.
Yes, we can, Jasper. What's the next show that we're going to do then?
Okay.
I was just going to say that when we first, when I first started to interact with Careful Cantrip, I think I found you guys on Instagram, and thought it looked interesting, and had some contact. And then the first stream that I actually watched was the first world building stream that you did. And there was already so much interaction. It was like, this is great, and this is why we do it. We want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and create cool stuff and share ideas, and
Well, from the actual world building perspective, and putting the business aspect to the side for a minute, there's so many people that I've interacted with at this point who they want to world build. They want to go out and do these kind of things, because everybody's got that spark of creativity in them somewhere, and when you look at world building as, and Michelle, I think you were saying that you work in the technical field, so you'll understand when I say this, but a lot of people look at world building as a waterfall method, where it's kind of this massive undertaking of a project where it's just, where do you get started, right?
Yeah.
Where, I always encourage individuals to look at it from more of an agile approach, from the ground up perspective. Build those small, tiny things and just put them to the side, because at some point in time, you're going to have this vast vault and archive of information, whether it be cities or NPCs or monsters. and then you can just bring it all together, kind of thing. And it's so having an outlet for them where they can go and, you know, test the waters and play with it and actually have something come out of it solidified and be able to watch it on Twitch afterward. You know, they love that aspect of it. So no, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot
sound advice for life in general, but also for D&D world building.
Agile.
Build an inn. Start with an inn or an inn keep. And then maybe the inn around it starts to develop, and then maybe the city around it starts to develop, and maybe it doesn't, and you create something else. And then 2 weeks later, those things come together. Maybe they don't. You were working on something else again, but it's the small things that can build the world. Of course, you can have like a global idea of this is what my, but that makes the task more daunting.
Yeah, and you never want to, and I tell a lot of aspiring DMs out there, because we do have a fair amount of people that get a hold of us to talk about, you know, how do I get into this? What do I do? All that kind of stuff. You know, should I start running modules and everything along those lines? And you're absolutely right, Michel. That's exactly what I tell them. I say, build a tavern, because that's all you need to start. You can spend hours inside of a tavern and have a great time. And then when you need a road to travel upon, then build the road, do it at the time, but don't let it stop you. Don't create these barriers in your life when it comes to DMing, to say, well, I have to do all of this stuff beforehand. Just get out there and do it. Yeah.
And true. I still, after I've been playing for like 28 years right now, and I still over prepare my sessions, even though I don't prepare that much, you know. It's so funny how that works, you know, because oh man, they could go there and there and there. Okay, I have a general idea of what's happening, and then there's this road there and there, and then, well, they have a discussion that lasts five sessions in a certain area that has been fleshed out, and I have 10 more weeks to work on whatever comes next. So yeah,
I think Roger had a good example for last session where. So it was episode 12 where we were first. Our adventuring group has stepped in through a portal into this strange new world, and we found this riddle.
Here.
Yeah, we're in the woods, but Roger said like, okay, I've prepared something, and it can either take 5 minutes or 5 sessions, and I have no idea, but we'll see.
Yeah,
ended up being 1.5 sessions, so it was like right in between the 5 sessions and the 5 minutes.
and that's always the dread of any DM. You sit down to start preparing for a session, and you think, oh man, they're gonna whip through this so fast. It's, you know, I gotta just over prepare at this point. I gotta have like 20 story beats that I want to cover. Depending on how you actually run your campaign, you know, we definitely do more of a narrative type approach to it. But you know, I've done that in the past where it's like, yeah, I've got my 20 points, and we maybe get through 3. And it's kind of like, okay, well now I have session content for the next 3 weeks, kind of thing, right?
So originally, so one of the things we always say at the start when we do our little recap is that our adventuring group, we got together because we all had to travel to Brentwick. And we found each other and formed a sort of caravan. And in Roger's head, this trip to Brentwick would take 3 sessions, and that would be the 3 sessions, that we didn't even air. So it was supposed to be 3 sessions, and then we started live, and we would start in Brentwick. And that just never happened. We're still not in Brentwick, and it might never happen. Might never happen.
But that's the beauty of it too. At the same time, it's kind of like, you know, he's created enough of an immersive world where it's like, you don't need that point A to point B. You guys want to go out and explore and learn all of these kind of things. And to me, that's what makes a successful campaign, is really that your players are immersed and enjoying themselves so much that they don't necessarily care about the main plot right now. I'm sure there's ways that you got to get back to that plot hook, depending on how you actually create your campaign. But I think overall, it's a testament to how good of a DM you are, or a world builder that you are, that your players want to go off the path. And I hate when I hear DMs say, "Oh, well, how do I get them back to railroad? I just got to railroad them back to things." Why bother?
Why bother? Let it go.
Let it go.
So
and
I'm
then
going to interrupt this conversation for a bit, and I'm going to the chat for a minute, because we have had a lot of fun comments. So, but you do not under-deliver. So those who are, I'm over-prepared, but I do not under-deliver. I think that's a comment about that. And then Ashley says, and this is a funny one, I think, old merchant navy proverb: if you plan early and well, you will end up planning twice. So that's what we are talking about. I think Reyna liked that one as well. Stefan says, Sal Wolfguard's marvelous teleportation adventures always screw up with the preparation. So Sal and Wolfguard are 2 characters in my campaign, and one of them has the ability to teleport anywhere. And they do
the bane of every dungeon master.
So and it is because they have to think of something and then they teleport there. So I have to invent a part of my world on the spot where they get to, and that's always so much fun. And then Esner N says, Jasper is like the typical academic at the conference, showing up with 45 slides for a 12-minute talk.
Yeah,
that's that's true.
Yeah, I know that well. I just, Dave, I just want to do a quick callback to what you said about Dungeon Master, and really credit to them when the players are immersed. And I think I just wanted to add, because I have so much respect for the people that I play with on the Precipice, that in this case, it's also a bit of the credit goes to the characters, because I think that everyone put so much effort into their characters that at one point we just had conversations between characters that would last like an entire session. It would go back and forth, where already like small story arcs started to happen just in conversations. And that was also a thing.
It's amazing when you have invested players, but I feel like, it's the responsibility of the DMs to get the players invested to a certain extent, because it is their world, and you want people to say, okay, this is fun enough that I'm going to bite. I'm going to hop into this. You've hooked me at this point. Love the mug. Love the mug. Where's my marketing? Where's my marketing director? I want a careful gantry mug now. But yeah, I think that, and I'm absolutely beyond blessed to have the players that I have at my table right now, because they want to role play. They get so invested that they actually get mad at the table of, an NPC that's done something. There was, in our last session, we had a betrayal that happened, and I won't spoil anything, but it, that had my players talking about it for the following week. Like they were still in game talking about it. Yeah, and to me, there's not a better compliment in the world besides being called Keanu Reeves. In terms of
which happened, people, which happened,
which happened. It's because he lets his dogs be killed by Russian mobs. No,
I'd never let it. No. I'd let a player die long before I'd let a pet die.
But come on, you have to admit it to the writers of John Wick. Like, they knew, okay, we're going to make this movie about a guy that's just out there killing people. Like, not even like people that are guilty of anything. Sometimes they were just standing there doing their job, like guarding a party, a disco or whatever. And it's like, how can we get people to invest in this guy? How can we make it so that this guy can go on a killing spree and people love him for it? And it's like, kill a dog. You kill a dog and it's like a free pass. Yeah, he gets a free pass.
Okay, let's get off the Keanu Reeves.
I saw more people, just one last thing. I saw more people that were supportive of John Wick than Liam Neeson in Taken, where it was like, oh, he took my daughter, blah, 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 blah. And everybody's like, no. They killed a dog. You need to burn the world. And I was like,
Did you see the puppy face?
I really love those movies. Anyway, so about your adventure, do you want to say anything about your experience in the adventure itself, or how is it going? Any highlights you want to address, for example? Or?
Sure. I'll try to leave out as many spoilers as possible for those who haven't watched through some of the episodes or are a little bit behind. But when I start a campaign, I kind of take the approach of first to third level, or whatever that first arc is. That's the prologue of the overall story. So, it's right now they're on a shipwrecked island. They're doing the things. They're getting some little bits and pieces about what the overall story is going to be. But I used levels 1 to 3 to build that bond. I think it's a tool that some DMs don't really utilize as much. But you have this ability where they're low level, where you can make them a group. And that's really and I think you guys have done it pretty well with the Precipice as well, in terms of, no one knew each other. And it's kind of wonky when you say, well, you just all meet in a tavern and you're expected to go on this level 20 campaign that's going to last forever. And it's kind of like, okay, well, you haven't given us reason as a player to stick together at any point in time. So I've utilized levels 1 to 3. We're only at level 2 right now, but things might change in the next couple hours or so, where you can progress and build that bond with the party at that point, where it's a lasting bond, where you've had been in adventures together, and you don't necessarily have to say, oh well, you were all part of guild, go. Right. So from that perspective, I'm very happy with the bonds that are being made. The inside jokes that are starting to create the foundation of the party overall. This whole Eli versus Alcor thing, which are two of the characters.
That's so funny. Yeah.
There's so many.
Every time it's like, I'm going to cast a spell. Where's Eli?
Right. The strange relationship between Alcor and Alara. That's coming up great. But I think overall the campaign's off to an amazing start. I think that there's enough that the players are going to be looking for, that we can build this epic long campaign, because we do plan to go to level 20. And we already have all understood that that's 2-year commitments. That's where we're going to. I've built the campaign around that. To a certain extent, don't get me wrong, I haven't planned 2 years worth of information, but I kind of go under the basis of building the story around the nemesis, and then going from there until their cross pass. But overall, I love the fact that the players are invested as they are. I love the fact that people are being very receptive and having emotional reactions to the villains that I'm putting in front of them. And I think that once we get to the mainland, who knows what's going to happen. And I love that,
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's absolutely agree with that. Like first to third level, and really create the group. That was what I was mentioning earlier. That was supposed to be our Brentwick, right? It was that was the thing that Roger planned, and things got sideways. And the funny thing for us in our campaign is that we are at this point, I think we're starting to become a group, even though people within the group still really don't like each other. There are reasons to stick together at this point, and that's super interesting.
I know that we had the episode where Thomas got really mad at Bowen, and then we got around the table, and then we were discussing, and previously we had discussed the glass shard, which shouldn't be taken. Anyway. And when we ended that session, Thomas Bowen's confrontation session, we had, are we ever going to come together as a group? Because
out of character, we had this conversation. How are
we going to do that? But then we remembered it's a cooperative game, so you have to find that link where you can really connect to the others, and it doesn't have to always be out of love for each other, which isn't. I think. Well, there are some bonds, but there's also mutual respect in ways. Even you're different than me, but. Okay, I understand why you are different, and let's go with that. That's what I think is really interesting about our group, at least. That I hope we'll be getting to friendship, maybe at a certain point.
But it will happen. But Last episode, I really felt the need because my character Oddleaf and Jasper's character Bowen really got into a rough patch last episode where it's like, ooh, they it looks like we hate each other. So I really felt the need at the end of the episode to just mention to the audience, like, Jasper and I are good friends. We do a live show next day. They're like, we're fine. But,
which is funny because our previous characters that were in the same campaign
we had a second edition campaign that ran for 15 years. It stopped a couple of years ago. And our characters in that campaign also, we were supposed to be best friends for some reason because we were both the warriors. We were in different groups. And before those groups got together, it was like when they finally get together, on Fortas, Jasper's character, and Strive, Michel's character, will definitely hit it off, and that never happened. He was just a rich boy kid.
It was done.
I remember there was the previous campaign that we played that was offline. There was a pivotal moment that really opened up my eyes in terms of how to potentially build bonds between characters. And the premise was that they basically had a choice whether to leave a dying companion behind or bring or resurrect him, essentially. And the party, to my shock, was split down the middle, and it created this huge amount of animosity between the group. And as a DM, I kind of sat back and thought, oh God, this could destroy the campaign right now. This is, with the amount of arguing that's happening.
I created a bomb.
I did. I literally set up this essentially this nuke that just went off in my face where, I thought it was going to be an easy answer of, well, we'll resurrect our companion and we'll go on our way and we'll complete the adventure. But that's not what happened at all. And at the end of the session, I said, guys, I'm really sorry. I didn't expect it to come to that point. And all of the players turned around and said, unquestionably, that was one of the greatest games of D&D we've ever played.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. That's
cool.
Yeah.
So to me, it was kind of, it changed my reflection on things to say, okay, you don't necessarily all need to be friends. There's ways that you can bond, and there's ways that you can maneuver around and finesse the party where it's kind of like, there might be some tiffs in between, there might be some straight up arguments, but it's going to help each individual player build their characters on their own and allow their characters to develop and build a little bit stronger of a relationship. Everybody knows that in a family you're gonna argue, right? So it just lends towards that kind of thought process of building your party into not just friends but an actual family.
Yeah.
Well, I have this party right now, which I do on a monthly basis, and they were first-time Dungeons and Dragons players. They had these characters all wrote a backstory, and half of the party decided to play an evil character, and the others other three were lawful good, and there's one in the middle, somewhat. And of course, the good guys didn't know the evil guys were evil, so the campaign started, and they were really convinced that everyone had the same ideals, but in an undermining way, the others always messed things up, and that really led to some strife, and it has clashed extremely a couple of times, But the good guys, they have this mission from their god that tells them, okay, there is evil in the world, but you have to make them see that they should be striving towards good. And the evil guys are saying, well, it doesn't really matter that they are the good guys in a way. We cope with different things in our lives in different ways. We aren't evil. We are just doing it another way. And in that strange balance, they form a party. But there's constant disillusionment about the other's morals at the same time. And I love how that works, because the only thing they had going is it's a cooperative game. So at the end of a session, we have to go to the next session. And how you figure that out, that's up to you. But and it doesn't have to be, let's forget about all this. Please no. But think of a way that this can work for you.
Yeah, the dichotomy of good and evil is such an interesting storytelling tool, if you will. I think that, one character that I always fall back on, which is just because whenever people ask me, well, can I play an evil character or can I play a good character on my alignment? At first I was hesitant to say, no, it's a campaign of good or it's a campaign of evil. But then I simply remembered one particular character that changes my mind every time. Darth Vader. Darth Vader, but in all seriousness, I mean, that is the epitome of character development that, creates this amazing character that's rich, that has flaws, that has all of these things built into it. And if you can give that to your players to experience that with their own character, that's a campaign.
Oh,
hey,
he dropped.
We lost Dave there for a while.
And then
for a bit.
Now we are messed up a bit.
Hopefully not for a while. Now our overlay is all weird.
Yeah.
But hang in there.
Hang in there. Where are you? Where
but
are
yeah,
you?
I mean, just to continue Dave's point. I mean, I don't know yet the point that he was ultimately going to make, but on the topic of Darth Vader, yeah, that's a great example of a evil character that could fit in a good party in some way.
Guys, I don't know what happened to me there for a minute. That was
no problem. Glad you're back. That. No.
Technical difficulties, guys. Technical difficulties. My apologies.
We are trying to. We are having a conversation with 3 people in different parts of the world. So in that sense, well,
who knows what's going to happen?
Other people in all different parts of the world are watching us, so it's already a win.
So there's a great conversation going on in chat about learning from each other. I think that's the premise in a way, and taking things back to real life and learning from even I think about from this show. So that's cool, and I like that that's happening almost individually or separately from our
conversation.
So our conversation. So one says, "Oh no," and then he says, "Yeah, he's back." It's Rar78. Don't know who that is, but welcome, Rar. So we can continue now because you are back. Darth Vader, great plot too. Yeah, I'm hoping that I'll have 3 of these stories in that campaign. Those redemption stories that really go to a very, very deep low and then start to build up again. But most people who have me as DM know that I like the drama and they're really kicking people in the nuts when they're down. So it might take a while.
That's an interesting point you bring up because apparently I'm known as the dungeon master that kills my players.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so yeah. Well, it's not.
You guys have something in common.
It's not that I kill my players. I never take the position of it's me as the DM versus my players. I'm here to facilitate the world. It's your choices that is what's going to get you guys killed if you're going to make stupid choices. And I have no qualms about killing them right then and there if they make a decision that warrants them to die. Someone's like, well, I'm going to jump in a pool of lava and try and swim across it. Well, you're going to die. That's just how
a
it's
group of
go.
4-level players trying to take on a Tarrasque or something. It's like
exactly.
That's not a great idea.
Don't do that.
No. But just kind of switching gears a little bit to try and get a little bit more on the side of where Chad is right now. How have you guys felt D&D's changed your lives outside of the actual game?
Wow. I think for me, the great thing for me personally, but I hear it from other people as well, and being an academic, I also know that there's been some research on the topic, is that D&D or role-playing games can really help out people to have these experiences that they wouldn't have in real life, or they have a safe environment where they can try out these social encounters, for example, and they can try out stuff. And even though it's not real life, your brain doesn't know that. You know, your brain, you had that experience, you had that conversation with that person, even if it was in a game. So you've learned something from it. And then, I feel that for me personally, Dungeons & Dragons really helped me try to make me a better person to really try and stand in the shoes of the person that I'm talking to, for example, and see where they're coming from and why they are saying the things that they're saying, and have more. Yeah, how you call it? I don't know how I would describe it, but I feel that specifically in that field, like in encounters with people, I think it really helped me to learn about all sorts of walks of life. And
for me, I got the game when I was 11, the basic red box set in Dutch even, because I think that's the only product they ever translated to Dutch, and it was fun because that was how do you say, elementary school, and that was we had a lot of fun by playing it, and it was just fun. But then when we got to middle school, is that the right name? Now I can't think of the right name.
Middle school? High school? I don't know what you guys...
Yeah, well, I don't know. High school. I was kind of friendless for the first year or so, 1.5 years, even though the friends that I had from my elementary school were also there. And I felt really lonely. And then this new guy came to class, and I said, I thought to myself, this is a guy who I'm going to connect with. And then very soon I found that he would be interesting to play this game with me. And then soon after, the friends that I still talk to them somewhat, but that I didn't consider close friends anymore, stepped back into my life when that happened. So it was really, for me, it was a game changer for real life purposes. And I can still get quite, I'm almost tearing up right now. I can still get quite emotional about that moment, because after that, we had a really close-knit group for the next 8 years or so, and then we went on different paths, and but we still kept coming back for Roger's campaign, for example, and I did role-playing airpole.net. I don't know if you know that, but it's text-based thingies.
We did that so much.
Yeah, and then we had these long sessions, and it's always been, from that point on, it's been a red line through my life, and it's a connecting thing for me, and a lifesaver in a way. Yeah. Although, I think it's a lifesaver in the sense, I don't want to be too dramatic. It's a lifesaver in the sense that I got my friends that I knew from when I was 4, and I still know them now because of this game.
Yeah, no, I can completely understand where you're coming from. And I think you're downplaying the fact that it is a lifesaver for some people.
But it wasn't.
I could imagine the I understand. It's not like you were on the edge of a cliff or anything at that point, but you were in a very low point in your life. You felt alone, you felt isolated, which is completely understandable, especially when you're just going into high school. So and that's one of the points I was going to bring up, was the fact that I've never seen another game be such a friend bonding experience, where it's not like, you're the game's over now, so we're just never going to talk to each other anymore. It's no, when's the next campaign? When are we starting for the next one? The amount of people that I've built these amazing relationships with over time, exactly through D&D and mostly through role playing. It's so much different than your typical video game. I mean, maybe not nowadays where they have big co-op games like the Minecrafts and the Among Us and stuff like that. But before that, I mean, when you played a video game, you're still sitting alone by yourself, right?
Yeah.
Where D&D actually brings you to the table. And back to what Michel was saying, is that even though you're playing these characters, it is you. You're playing vicariously through this player. So you're having these immensely emotional and intricate moments within your life as these players, and it's just it's such an amazing feeling to not only be able to play in those worlds, but to facilitate that as a dungeon master.
Yeah.
So if you don't play D&D, go start right now. Just put it on mute. Go buy some dice. Yeah, go play D&D.
He said it right there. We can stop this. We can stop this.
Yeah, okay. Hey, it was fun.
Well, maybe finish watching stream first and then go.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, whatever. Whatever suits you. Okay. Well, great question from your side, Dave. Thank you for that. And so was it that experience for you as well?
The big experience I had was I'm already a pretty big extrovert. My problem was with empathy. I struggled immensely with empathy in my life. After having down points in my life, I kind of saw it as, the world's not fair. It's never going to be. So I have to go out and just take what I want from it, kind of thing. And to hell with anybody else around that. So for me, I've never actually, I've only played in one campaign in D&D. And that was just recently. I've always been the dungeon master from day one of me actually starting the game. So for me to be involved in these characters' lives the way that I am, to the point of where it's like, I have ultimate power now. I can do whatever I want, and they just have to go with it. But then I learned the characters and I started to care about the characters, and vice versa. I started to care more about the people playing those characters. So for me, it opened up this entire world of, and I hate saying the word because it's got this weird political correctness around it, but the inclusivity of D&D to really accept everything that the world has to offer, and realize that as much as I am the DM and I do have that level of control, my decisions will affect other people's lives, and I have to take that into consideration. So that's probably my biggest takeaway when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah. Wow.
Also real.
Thanks for sharing.
Even made me think about some of my own experiences. You talk about being an extrovert and stuff, and I can relate to that. I had a sort of similar experience where I am also really extroverted, as Jasper knows. And I've always played in bands. I was the sort of rock and roll and party. And D&D was one of the games where I really learned how to step back, be a group, listen to other people. And sometimes it's still sort of a battle with myself to, I really have to shut up now when somebody else is talking, because I still have the But
at the same time, it shows your level of commitment to the game. I mean, it's not that you want to. You're not wanting to speak up because you want to be the star. You want to speak up because it's like, I want to give input to the game.
Yeah, enthusiastic. It's like,
Exactly, that's right. So it's a much more positive way to look at things, where it's like, I don't want to be the star. I want everybody else to have the same level of experience and enjoyment that I'm having.
Yeah, and we're doing this all together. And it also relates back to something you said earlier about, we were talking earlier about the difference between playing around the table or the live stream, where around the table things can get quite chaotic and people are talking amongst each other, and maybe two people are having a side conversation while somebody else is talking to the DM. And live stream really even more so forces you to listen to the others and be quiet, take turns in speaking. And I think that for really setting scenes, that's sort of a big plus in this environment, where you really get scenes between certain characters that you wouldn't normally have around the table, because if two people are having a scene, as it were, then other people are having other conversations or whatever. And it's one of the positives that I really saw in the live stream campaign.
No, I definitely agree. The amount of involvement from all characters in those scenes is really incredible, because they really start to highlight the relationships between those two characters, when everybody has to shut up because we only have one audio track to go over, kind of thing. It definitely puts that spotlight on that relationship for a minute. And it means a lot more to the players at that point, because everybody's drawn to it. Everybody's paying attention to it. So they might be a little nervous at first. I see that a lot with more newer players, where they're just kind of like, oh, Jesus, the spotlight's on me. I don't know how to react to this. But they soon learn that it's, the other players are going to talk about it and be like, oh man, that was such a cool moment between you and so-and-so. And it's that, it grabs you a little bit. That's where the addiction of a player comes from, right?
Yeah.
Well, if you're saying that, I'm a Critical Role fan, and Michel is as well. The other three in the party aren't that much of a Critical Role fan, but it's always what I like to see when Travis or Ashley does something, and when the spotlight is on them, they are always bloody nervous. Because still, after years of playing on the internet, their face is famous by now in the D&D community, and that nervousness about being in the spotlight and doing that which Mr. Mercer has planned out for you is that's a beautiful moment where you can still see what this does to you, this game.
Yeah. I'm going to bring up one of the most controversial statements you'll probably ever have on your podcast right now.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready for this? And it's involving Critical Role, so it's just going to amplify everything.
Okay.
Travis Willis-Ham is probably one of the top 3 greatest D&D players of all time.
I think so as well. Yeah, I think so as well. So it's not that controversial here because he's so conscious about what's happening at the table all the time, and really letting other people's be in the spotlight when it's their turn. 100%. Never an egoistic thought in that man's brain. I love it. Yeah.
He's and that's exactly.
Spectrum, I'm a big Marisha Ray fan as well. So.
Oh really?
Yeah. Even in the Keylif days, Jasper was one of the people that was like, she's doing the impossible. She's playing an unlikable character, and people confuse that with her being unlikable sometimes. Which I've
she is very edgy. Her characters she plays are very edgy, and I agree that it's a testament to Marisha Ray's skill level as an actress. To be able to play, and it's not even like she's playing the villain. She's just playing a character, because a villain is just as easy to play as a hero, because you're supposed to be evil, that people are supposed to hate you, so you just pile on those aspects. You go kill a puppy and immediately people are going to hate you, right? But to play on the border of saying, no, I'm an unlikable character and I'm going to drive my path forward, you got to give a certain amount of respect to a player and a character like that.
Yeah,
I think what she does is she's taking a low charisma character. She plays that pretty well. And I think that what she does is reflect a certain amount of the population that actually plays Dungeons and Dragons and isn't that social and everything. And she puts that in the game, because while she's herself is pretty social, and she can become a leader even though her charisma would rub against that fact. And I think that is amazing role play. And the fuss, because I don't want to say another word, she gets over that. It's really bothering me, because then they aren't looking at how well she does that. Instead, they're just focusing on how disruptive she sometimes can be in that campaign. But that's so very good in character.
Let's be fair. Everything we're saying here now about these people, it's just our opinions. As nobody sort of, they are professionals in their respected fields for a reason, and very successful with Critical Role for very good reason. So this is just our.
With this all being said, because we can go on and on, I know this by now. we are in for an hour and we haven't discussed the main topic, and I've got a lot of things.
Sorry, guys, I didn't mean to take us on entirely.
No. This is wonderful. We could skip the topic altogether if we can go on with this, but I have some people in chat who really contributed to the show, so I think we have to do something about this as well. And So with that being said, let's go into the main topic. I still have to have a jingle for that one.
I'm writing. I already have it written to record it.
So come on. What is the perfect combat encounter for you? So of course, we start with the funny ones in a way, right?
Yes.
Lay it on me.
Yes. Okay, here we go. So the first thing is, the first thing that was being said was by Alec, and he said, "This is the most vague and open-ended question of all time."
Well, then he never saw the previous. Then he never saw the previous questions we asked on the show.
Those were far worse than this one. But I put an edited after that first sentence because I'll be bringing Eric back at the end of the show with the sentence behind this, because I think that was really more relevant than the first part. But I had to laugh because, well, I'm a bit chaotic and I always make these sentences multiple interpretable. Is that
the greatest one was the greatest one was the last one, which said, "What was your favorite boss?" And people just started telling about their real life bosses. Like, I have this great. I work
guitar amplifier of boss
guitar pedal, boss guitar pedal, or like, I work in this library and my boss is great.
And then Robert says, "One that doesn't take the entire night to finish." That's well, and that's the first one I really want to start with in a way, because
let's start by saying that all of them are correct. All of the answers are correct because it specifically said,
yes, they are. Yes, they are.
For you, what's the best encounter for you? So one that doesn't take all night for this person is the perfect encounter. Like, I personally like encounters that last an entire evening, but sometimes not every session. But if you have like the main ultimate villain or whatever, yeah, sure, lay it on me. Bring out all the mechanics and stuff. But yeah.
It's also how long do your sessions last? You know, because is it an 8-hour session or a 2-hour session? That makes a big difference. Because that's what I'm experiencing in the Precipice of Dreams, is that we let's put my cursor there. We have 2.5 to 3 hour sessions, and combat sometimes lasts 2 hours, and that's a long combat. But yeah. And I'm having a lot of fun, and I hope our viewers are having a lot of fun as well. So I can imagine this being a good answer to the question, because, as you said, it is true. Do you have anything to say about this statement, really, Dave?
I would agree to a certain perspective. So I think it's the perfect encounter to me is the ones that my players are having a really good time all the way through. That's the number one objective for D&D for me as a DM, is that first and foremost, are my players having fun? Then everything else follows behind it, whether it be rules, dice rolling, role playing, whatever the case is. So if you're enjoying yourself, if the DM's taken the time to create this, maybe multi-level or multi-staged villain that could take 3 sessions to defeat, doesn't really matter. I mean, if the players are enjoying themselves, if they're feeling the risk of combat, so they're thinking, my decisions matter right now in terms of my combat, then that's totally cool. That's awesome. You can have an amazing time doing that for 3 whole sessions. So
if you have created this amazing encounter for yourself, right? This great boss, and you see within half an hour to an hour, that your players are not digging it, would you dump some of the hit points, lower the AC?
I'd kill the monster on the next hit.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Just like,
because it's not
got a lucky
game.
Shot in. Yeah, no,
it's not. I'm just facilitating and really giving them the board to play on. It's them who are making the moves. It's them who are rolling the dice. So for me, yeah, there's been instances where I've planned out this huge encounter that's multi-staged. I do something a little bit different than a lot of DMs do, or not all of them, but a few of them, is that I hate saying, okay, roll the dice, you hit, you miss. I never want to say those words. I always try and describe specifically in a cinematic way every single shot for shot kind of thing. And to me, that invests my players that much more, because they're visualizing exactly what their players are doing. And eventually they start to do it on their own and say, well, I'm going to, instead of saying, well, I rolled a hit, well, I draw my swords and I flick them around and I lunge towards the creature. And to me, it's like, okay, you're invested enough where you're enjoying this. So if you're engaged and you're doing that kind of stuff, then I'll keep the combat going. But not every combat has to be epic. It can just be a regular combat, in which case, if someone dies, if the creature dies far faster than I had planned, who cares? Just move on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well said.
I agree to a certain amount, and we've discussed this on the Precipice as well, because I think that there's a lot to be said for the cinematic approach, and we do that as well. We describe our actions, and we do it. I think we do it from our character's perspective a lot, and sometimes we have a little fun with that, like last episode.
Yeah, that was great.
And at a certain point, you get to the point where we get a bit technical into the combat bit, and we are more approaching it like a strategic thing. And that doesn't bother me as well, because then we are still on the edge of our seats, but we suddenly feel the approach of death, and we are really getting into how can we cope with this mechanisms. And I'm just saying, well, I cast this spell and it does so much damage, and it's okay as well. That's what we concluded after that conversation, I think. Although I like the cinematic thing as well, but the good example, not because of Michel, because it's with Fjord, played by Travis as well. The third time you say I cast Eldritch Blast, it's still Eldritch Blast, So there's always this thing where it's not about the repetition per se, but you can shorten it a bit because you know it by then. And at the first time in the new encounter, you start up again by building up the visualization of your spells. But you can loosen up a bit when it's the third time you use.
I switched around where I say I blast some purple energy or purple black eldritch energy into my enemy.
Yeah.
Instead of saying it.
Yeah, and there's always I 100% agree, because once you can only describe slashing a sword so many times within a single encounter, right?
Yeah.
So it's, for me personally, when I start to feel that lull in their level of the cinematic aspect, that's cool. They can cool their jets and basically just hit or shoot an arrow or whatever the case is, and then I just fall back on how it plays out from the villain or the target's perspective. Hits him in the arm as a bolt of arcane electricity cascades down his arm, kind of thing. But it's just little pieces like that where it goes over and above. Well, you hit, roll damage.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you want to do?
Course.
You hit, you roll damage.
Yeah.
That gets stale so fast, and at that point, it's kind of like people are getting bored with the combat at that point.
So there's an interesting question in chat by Esner. DM Dave, how do you balance the players having fun and your online audience having fun? And Ashley says, no, that's a great question, Esner.
That is a phenomenal question. Thank you for asking it. So to me, going back to, and it really relates back to what I was just saying, is the fact that people are there to watch the show for a reason. And the fun parts to them is when they're enjoying themselves along with the players. So there's a certain amount of it is that if the players are having fun, if they're laughing, if they're engaging, all this kind of stuff, there's a certain amount of, viewers want to feel that level of excitement. They're watching you as a group because they're really enjoying themselves, and they're like, when a viewer looks at it and they're like, oh man, those people are having a lot of fun, I'm going to continue watching. That's how Critical Role became the success it was, because Matt Mercer wasn't just asking, hey, roll the dice, hit damage, hit miss kind of thing. He was building this immersive world, and his players were really, really enjoying it, and people jumped on that bandwagon. Let's face it, there's, other than maybe Liam and maybe Taliesin, they're not the best D&D players in the world. they're amazing role players.
Yeah.
But D&D players, they're not so great. I mean, they're average. I'm not saying they're not great.
Laura and Sam both had amazing things that are where they were so original with how they used certain spells and stuff. Like they have those moments, yes, but they are mostly the role playing actors, and Critical Role almost plays like an audio drama or an audio book, and that's why.
Yeah. I understand what you're getting at as well, because but it's at my table as well, because there are so many people who are forgetting what they should add to their D20 and have no perfect realization of what they can use. Or
have you ever played second edition, Dave?
I haven't had the honor of playing the crunchy second edition.
So do you know about Thaco? Or Thaco, I don't know how you pronounce it. 2 hits, AC 0.
No, so I'm not.
This was the calculation that you had to do to find out whether you would hit or miss. Instead of just rolling a d20 against AC, you would roll to hit armor class 0, and then you would do other things, and armor class would go into the negatives and stuff. Anyway, every roll that everyone had to make, we had the same thing. Like, okay, should I add, subtract? What do I do? And that went on for 10 years, where it's like, we've done this for 10 years and still it's not intuitive immediately. It's like we've never played this game before.
Yeah. And honestly, that's what I love so much about 5th edition, is that they've left it so open, where it's kind of like, the whole point of it isn't to do math. We're not here to sit and do math and say, okay, well, subtract this and then minus this and then add this. It's no. Play to have fun. Do epic shit. And if the DM's good, he's going to let you do epic shit. And really, just to kind of finalize my point on the question, is describe as much as you can. Make the world immersive. Allow everybody in their own heads to visualize, what the pirate queen looks like, or what the spell looks like, kind of thing. Give them the opportunity to play along with the characters as much as possible by giving them as much information in terms of the setting and the surrounding, the smells, the tastes, the air that's around them, kind of thing. And that's going to naturally allow people to kind of get lost in their own way, to become immersed in your world. And once you have an audience immersed into your world as well, they'll just want to play along with the characters, and they'll be thinking about their own decisions they would have made.
Yeah. So we have your next question in chat, Dave.
My question. Okay.
As he says, DM Dave, I haven't seen the stream, so I apologize if this is answered there, but do you find you have to put in some different vehicles for combat to stay fresh? An NPC party to add the DM in DM table talk?
I generally, again, I mean, I like to add a lot of variety into my combat situations. The variety in terms of the monsters or the enemies that they're facing. I try and not repeat too much unless it's on a specific story arc where they're geared towards one specific thing. I also am a big fan of my players trying to work out a diplomatic solution within the combat situation. I always leave that open to allow for that potentially to happen, which definitely creates these really, really unique moments. There was, in our last game, there was a bridge troll, just your typical, trope of the troll under the bridge. And that was, I fully intended for that to be a combat situation, but my players worked their way through it with some, good role playing and some successful skill rolls, where they thwarted the troll without having to put up arms in any way, shape, or form. So, make sure that you allow for that openness within any kind of encounter, even around combat encounters. It might not feel comfortable you as a DM at first, but let that kind of roll out and play. And then at the same time, to keep it fresh, I'm always playing. I'm always playing the movie of the combat in my head, and I'll always kind of think about it almost from a Disney-esque perspective, to say, okay, how Eli's going to go try and hit a monster. How would Eli the rogue go try and hit a monster? Well, he's a halfling, so last time he did one of those ground slides underneath it while he held his blade up and dug along the belly of the beast itself. That was just him saying, I want to hit it with my sword. So, that's the kind of stuff where if you can get into that cinematic mode, if you can even just slightly start thinking about those kind of things, it creates such a unique combat encounter in itself where your players are just saying, well, I'm going to hit it with my sword.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, we are going to the next slide because we have a lot of them to go through. But a great answer again, Dave. So, some funny things. AJ says, 1 fighter, 1,000 kobolds. Yeah, pretty simple. Yeah. Jeff says, a 10 by 10 foot room. It contains an orc and a pie. William says, a dragon in a dungeon. And then Billy says immediately after that, a dungeon in a dragon. So that's
interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and then Gary says, and this one I liked the most, a door that just won't open. And
doors are the worst encounters in Dungeons and Dragons. No adventuring group ever in the existence of Dungeons and Dragons has figured out doors. It's a universal fact. Doors are the worst enemies of any adventuring party.
It's true.
Yeah. So
and they spend hours on every single door. I mean, I remember one in particular where I think my players spent a good 15 minutes before they actually just tried to turn the knob and open the door, and it was kind of like, there you go, guys.
Famous example where it's like you start discussing how to open the door for 2 hours, and then it turns out to just open by itself. Nothing wrong with just a regular door. Or you start discussing the door for 2 hours, and then the druid says, hey, I can just stone shape it or do stone to mud, which was the spell called in 2nd edition, and make a door next to the door. And we actually did that. And then went through the wall because we didn't want to touch the door. And it's like...
Yeah, 2 other examples. We once, with the big party that Michel and I were both in, we were with 12 players or something at the end. And we really couldn't get through this door, so we made the whole party ethereal, and we went through anyway. And then
sure, that works.
And then in my party I have a battle rager who is Wolfguard, who is played by Harris Tevez, who is in chat, and he lowers his head and he just bashes it, or he bashes the wall next to the door and it goes through in that way. And that's sometimes easier to break the wall indeed than the door itself for some reason. Yeah.
I just want to pick out one answer in particular, which triggered me sort of, and that's that I think that you should, but in a good way, it triggered me. But I think you should always, like every DM, should at one point do like the first combat encounter, first level combat encounter, and return that encounter when they're like level 10 or 20 or whatever, because it feels so good when you're level 10 character and you're just mowing through these like hordes of goblins like they're butter, and it's just a really great feeling. And after that you can give them beholders or Tarrasques or a Tarrasque beholder in one, whatever, but just that for one time, like let them slog through heaps and heaps of first level
the classic minions, where it's just a matter of you're just tearing through things at that point in time, and they're one hit, they're flying you're killing off 3 or 4 enemies with just a single slash kind of thing.
Specifically if you remember that time when you were first level and you had a time against 2 or 4 of them, and now it's like you can really feel the growth in your character. I
always like at the very beginning putting my players up against a foe that is way beyond their level, and the foe just wiping the floor with them entirely, because it gives them a goal to set themselves towards too. So when I reintroduce the enemy at level 10, there's this huge amount of animosity and tensions that's built up, because it's that might have been their only failure up until this point, and then they can unleash that, and it's just kind of this awesome release that they get, and it makes for phenomenal moments.
Yeah, absolutely.
With that, let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, Bring
So
it.
this is a bit of a small font I used here because there was a lot of information.
I
Mark
can't
says-
read it. I rely on you.
Yeah, Mark says the party wins, but all spell slots are used up, and each PC has 1 hit point left. Pretty epic one.
Yep.
Tony says, I want an interesting fight, like a bar brawl with chairs and tankards thrown around, or swinging on chandeliers, maybe throw some slapstick in. And Rafe says, we had an encounter with a Catoprepas, which was very difficult. Additionally so because of the gas and insects. My players managed to make almost all saves, which made it possible to kill it. There were many anxious moments, but depleted, they did it. So those are 3 examples. I bundled these together because I think that this is a kind of going to that point where it's all in the balance. You have no resources left, and it's this encounter that has you on the edge of the seat and is one for the books.
Yeah.
Every player pulling all the stops to, and the DM as well. Like DM can pull out all the stops and use all the abilities, Yeah,
I think the one caveat I would throw in there is the fact that, and if you're a DM who's listening to this right now, just be sure that you know your table. And I don't necessarily mean know all of the limitations and features of the actual characters that they're playing. Know how far your characters are willing to push themselves, because a lot of the time, especially with newer players, they'll push themselves into situations that will get themselves killed very easily when it comes to combat. So, just make sure that you have a good idea of what your players will and will not do. And I'm not saying you're trying to second guess exactly what they're going to do, just what are their demeanors when it comes to combat overall, and use that knowledge to balance the encounter.
Yeah. And it's nice that if you do these kind of encounters, that maybe it's not at first level in this case, because then, well, it could be at first level, but that there are some escapes possible if for your character if it's purely combat related. That's the other thing why I bundled these, because these are not saying anything about another way of handling the combat, like negotiation before with the troll, for example. It's what they like is to get to that 1 hit point stage, and that's where they get their kicks from. I've had a lot of these kinds of battles.
I think we sort of had one in our campaign, the previous battle, the last battle that we did in the last episode.
2 down.
We really went to the brink.
Yeah. All resources depleted.
I think those make for amazing combat encounters when they do whittle down to that point. That everybody's going to sit back after that and kind of breathe almost as if they were in combat themselves for a minute, like, my God, that was so close, kind of thing. And those create for amazing moments. Just don't do that every single time.
No, and don't plan for it. Maybe it's like it happens when it happens, and that's what makes it magical. And those moments specifically awesome. If you really try and plan for it, it probably won't even work. Unless you're really fudging your die rolls or changing monster abilities on the spot as a dungeon master. And I don't think that would make for particular interesting combat. I think you would feel that as a player and as a dungeon master as well. It's like
you bring up an interesting point, because there you say you stop fudging, and we had the previous point where Dave said that when the combat encounter is obviously not fun anymore, I quickly kill off the enemy.
Well, but there's a big difference between the two. One is, I wouldn't if my players were really enjoying the encounter, the dice are gonna land where they roll, and that's how it's gonna go. And I'm gonna put the effort in because I know that they're putting the effort in. But if it's boring, again, this is a game. We're here to have fun. And from my perspective, the characters are there to do epic shit. If they're not doing epic stuff anymore like that, then there's not a point to this encounter other than killing the creature and moving on to the next thing to bring that liveliness up. So for me, I will fudge dice roll and stuff like that when it gets to a point of where my players aren't enjoying themselves anymore. And that's really the only time I would do that.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was
same for me as well.
Yeah. Although, I always have had trouble. I did fudge dice, of course. I'm a forever DM, so there are these points where you really have to do that. But I always thought it was funny with, especially the first party that they had, that the combat always got dangerous, not because it was a dangerous type of combat, but because, and this was in second, which was quite harder to play than 5th edition, more deadly and everything. But they always started their first 3 rounds with casting protective spells, and that gave the enemy a chance to really start hitting on them before they ever started to change it around, So a lot of my combats, I got known for that kind of combat style, but it was more the players who did that, starting to prepare and everything. I was man, this creature has been on 1 hit point for like 3 turns, but it keeps on hitting because everyone is casting cure wounds and everything, And then they said, well, it's not a harsh encounter, Jasper. Again to the brink. Yes, yeah. But you could have handled it a lot differently. But I'm shocked, Jasper, says here Stevens. Yeah, I do fudge them sometimes, but I don't need to do it in 5th edition anymore because for some reason I roll so badly. It's I can't stand it, I roll 100 times in the single combat and I have 1 critical hit and about 10 ones. I don't know what's happening. I was always the DM who did the critical hits and never rolled 1, but since 5th edition.
You got nerfed in 5th edition. There was a specific book that you don't know of, Jasper, where it specifically said that they nerfed you. Yes.
Do you ever utilize critical misses?
I sometimes when the story calls for it. I don't do it at everyone because I think it messes up what the players are trying to do too much. But sometimes a situation is called for where that applies. Yeah,
we did it a lot in 2nd edition, but there I think it was specifically part of the rules as well, or maybe it's not really in a house rule, maybe in an appendix rule somewhere, but it was for players as well.
And at that time I was a teenager.
Like you drop your sword or your sword gets stuck in the wall, and next turn you have to make a strength thing to try and pull it free again.
Yeah, and I was a teenager when I started playing 2nd edition, and I was far more rule-oriented than I am now. Now it's the rule of cool, for example, which was mentioned again in your stream with Reina as well, with Blonde Dave.
Right.
Yeah, I like that one, so it will stick. Anyway, and it's more the rule of cool these days. Seeing what does a character want to do, and what kind of check might coincide with that. And the other thing is that A1 is also a cool result. That's another important thing.
That's something. That's why we roll our die. We use our dice on stream. We don't do a digital die roller or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's because we trust each other and we've played together a lot in real life as well. But it's also, I think, all of us can really appreciate a good one,
Yeah.
Because that sometimes that just makes for the coolest drama. Or of course, you have these moments where you really want to hit and you roll a 1 and it just sucks, and your entire turn is taken away. You have done nothing, and it sucks for a moment. But usually, like, ones can. I
think as Bowen, I rolled 2 natural ones on a cooking check when I was distraught. So that coincided so
well, yeah.
So well, yeah.
I think you can also, as the dungeon master, you can utilize the natural ones for introducing a very interesting wrench in the overall plans of things. I'll give you an example. In our last game, Reyna, Alara, tried to do something very stupid for a wizard. She tried to just run up to the bad guy and punch them in the face. She got a critical one, so the enemy proceeded to break her wrist. So now all of a sudden, being a wizard, you can't cast somatic spells anymore because you don't have use of your wrist. So it's stuff like that where it's like, okay, I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to try and kill you, but I'm going to put this big thing in the middle of the way just to see how you think through all of that. So I'll be really interested to see how she does with that tonight.
No big deal. Yeah, I can really appreciate that. I can really appreciate that, and I think those sorts of things were more common in second edition and maybe third. Now in fifth, it's more like, no, you don't want to punish the player, sort of punish the player, right?
I think that's something I can't agree with. I really dislike that fact that everything has to be a positive encounter. No, character also gets built in some kind of negativity. And of course, it doesn't have to be negative against the player, but it can be against the character, because that's what makes a great arc. And you're saying it quite right. If you read the second edition rules, it's all, but if you can't cope with it, think of a rule and make that the rule for this thing. And if, and there were all these kind of exceptions. And the funny thing is that fifth, for me, is the best mix between second and third edition, because it got back that elasticity in a way that was in. Oh, there goes Dave again. Does he have the free 45-minute error that one of my players also has in one of my campaigns? Let's see if we can get him back.
Could be.
There he is in the waiting room.
Yeah.
Boom, boom.
It has been around 45 minutes for both times. Yeah. Hey, welcome back.
Sorry about
one
that,
of my
guys.
players,
I think it's Discord likes to time me out for some reason. I don't know why.
45 minutes. I have one player who does that as well, and we haven't found a setting that does that. So
that's bizarre.
Anyway.
So you were saying that you really like the fact that 5th edition has kind of combined the two elements of 2nd edition and 3rd edition into something
but the interpretation has mostly led to, I think, what I've seen is that it's always the rule of cool, and that shouldn't be the case.
Well, and I would challenge that. I would challenge you on that.
That's nice.
Because I look at the critical, and Michel brought up an interesting statement in terms of punishing the players. I look at natural or critical ones as a way to further challenge the player so that they have the ability to grow as a character and succeed or fail.
Yeah.
And in that case, it's a matter of, okay, how you react to this situation is completely in your hands. I'm just challenging you further, and I'm challenging you directly rather than the party.
I think the difference is challenging the player or punishing the player. And sometimes a player may feel like he's being punished while he's actually being challenged.
Yeah, but then punishing in a way. Well, now we're going into semantics, I think, because it's we in these times we tend to negate that bad things happen for some reason, and that's not true, because that's just flawed. Because I had this conversation with somebody yesterday, this day, about the thing that's happening all around the world. These times we think it's unfair that is happening. Well, in olden times they thought, well, there's this plague crossing the land. We're going to die. And of course, it's not that black and white, but it's not unfair that it is happening. It is happening, and we have to cope with it. And it's the same thing in Dungeons and Dragons. Some things you have to cope with, even though they are bad. That's a certain degree of realism that even in real life we tend to negate sometimes, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm a philosopher by the way, so I studied philosophy. I get into this.
Well, I'm not gonna argue that much, because clearly I'm gonna lose really badly and make myself look stupid. So I'll just. But I tend to agree with you on that, and you're right. It is we're arguing over semantics of the word. Like we're dealing with right now, it's a challenge, and you have a choice, and whether you follow one path versus follow the other path is going to be whether or not you fail or you succeed. And if you go down one path, you might fail, and that could cost you dearly. But at the same time, it will help you grow as a person overall. And it's the same thing within D&D, right?
Yeah.
It's the failures that make the characters better. It's no one gets participation ribbons at my table. That's not a thing. Either you you do well and you succeed, or you fail well and you learn. And that's really what it boils down to. So when it comes to critical misses, I give them the opportunity to fail positively, in the sense of, here's an opportunity for you to learn from your mistake.
Yeah.
So now we are 3 slides in, and we have about 25 minutes left.
Let's go. Next one.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. We're going to be a bit faster, I think. So O'Shea says, Goblin ambush at level 1. That's the thing you brought up, Michel.
Yeah.
Nothing beats running that first combat encounter for new players when they start killing gobos and becoming addicted to the game. And then maybe return later to do the same thing and have the experience
at level
again.
10. And once more at level 20.
Yeah. And then Nick says, when everyone is leveled up and rested and get to just obliterate the DM's careful crafted encounter without losing a drop of health. I like that one as well. And Call of Bob says, one that you don't see coming. I like that as well.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Good one.
Let's not discuss these in further depth. But
no, I think they're very self-explanatory.
Yeah, I think we discussed this in a certain degree. Yeah. Nikki says, encounters where choices matter but aren't obvious at the same time. Enemies with different aspects that need or need not be countered, which leads to different tactics. I had an encounter where wizards were summoning something. Should the players interrupt for fear of them completing it, adding to the danger of the encounter, or focus first on the forced push ranged skeletons and the ice wall training methods, and how to cross the moat that would turn you to ice, or how to deal with the different levels of terrain. So that's a long one.
I think that if I could just interject for 1 second, is that if that's probably, and I know that, we're not supposed to talk about 4th edition, but I think that's the one thing that 4th edition did very, very well, is how to introduce the terrain and the environment into your combat encounters to make it that much more interesting. And I really, for anyone who hasn't looked into how that works and you're a DM, go check that out. 4th edition combat, adding the terrain and stuff in, amazing for your encounters.
I think Matt Colville has made 2 or 3 videos where he specifically talks about how to add elements of 4th edition, like what you're talking about right now, the combat encounters and abilities that monsters had into your 5th edition game.
That's exactly where I got it from. I mean, the guy's a master of his craft. Anyway.
It really got me interested into 4th edition as well. I just skipped that edition, not for any particular reason. We were playing 3.5. I had a short break of Dungeons and Dragons, and when I came back, 5th was out, so I just skipped it. But
So it's interesting as well. I think 4th edition did some good things. I think the bloodied condition was a good one, for example. Doing things with terrain was good as well, but I think in a way I already did that for some parts, but they really made it gamey in some way, and some people like that, some people don't, but they did include that. And the other thing was ritual casting. I really liked the addition of that, which has also been added to 5th edition. Those were the main things, but I must say I haven't played that much 5th edition because I couldn't get through the rules. And
4th edition,
the 4th edition, But I don't agree that it's a bad game. It's just not my game. That's what I should say about it.
Yeah.
But it's I think Nikki made a great example of how combat can be interesting, at least.
Yeah, for sure.
Continuing this trend where the environment starts to take, because I've built it up in a certain way, is that John says, I love when my players get into a random brawl in an interesting location. 2 boats side by side, a rope bridge above a vast pit, the edge of a tall cliff, environmental hazards enhance the gameplay. Emo. And Edward says, one with a lot of moving pieces. I'm 99% the DM and there's nothing more boring than just trading blows. Fight with goblins at level 1. Let's add difficult terrain, a blizzard or moving platforms. Maybe a time limit like quicksand or rising water or ... So here we see about the same thing that Nikki says, that making the combat itself interesting through by adding more strategic options into it.
Yeah. So we're getting closer to my perfect encounter.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about this. I liked. I will try not to spoil Dave, but I liked the one where you use the hairs to control the skeletons.
Oh yeah, the puppet master. Yeah.
Even though it still was kind of a straightforward encounter, and they really countered that mist thing and everything. I thought it was the way it got interesting because of the scare it put on your party as well, and they didn't know how to handle it, what to do first. Is there something with the hairs, or do we attack the skeletons? Can you put that combat into a certain perspective from your point of view?
Yeah, sure. I think, it goes back to what I was saying earlier about giving variety in terms of how your players handle the encounter. Like you said, I mean, the puppet master, and for those who haven't seen it, essentially it's a shaman or a witch doctor that uses these long tangled hair, almost dreadlocks, that we're able to pick up undead creatures and utilize them like puppets. But it gave pause, because really the combat encounter was just my players against skeletons. And I thought about that, and I'm like, that's really boring. I mean, they've already been fighting things. It's not going to be that interesting. But just to add in this dynamic that now all of a sudden the creatures are being controlled by something else, it allows them to stop and adds a layer of complexity to the overall combat encounter, which, it's going to make them think a little bit more rather than just being like, well, I'll roll to hit kind of thing. It's so going back to, having these other layers involved in all of it. That's going to significantly enhance the overall combat encounter. And it's not that hard. It's just throwing one little tiny thing in there that changes the dynamic a little bit is going to create an entire new element to the combat that, is just going to add value to it into the player's eyes.
So how did your players experience that?
They tried to go at it both ways. They went at it with blunt force, and they went at it from attacking the hair. It turned into the start of the whole Alcor Eli thing when he blasted the creatures with Thunderwave, with Eli hanging from the strands of hair directly above it. But yeah, they took it and they said, okay, here's an element to it that's different from what we faced before. Let's interact with that to the best of our abilities and see if there's some kind of outcome from it. So again, it builds into their level of investment and builds into the immersiveness, because they're now having to think through the overall encounter. In complete honesty, they could have killed it either way. They could have cut the hair, or they could have just destroyed the skeletons. It really didn't matter, but it gave that little oomph. It gave a little bit more flavor to the encounter, and they left the table thinking, man, that was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds awesome.
So now I'm going to ask you another question. If you would put that same encounter, or how would you enhance on that encounter when your party would, for example, be 5th level and have more ways to tackle such a fight? I
have a real easy answer for that. I would allow the hair to potentially control the character.
That's a cool one. Yeah. And that's how complexity can be added in combat. in nice ways. You have this theme, and would you on the fly have done such a thing if one of the players suggested it to you in a non-direct way?
100%.
Yeah.
The best moments for many of the players is when they call it beforehand.
Yeah.
And as a DM, I naturally find that if your players are invested and they are engaged, they're going to tell you the story. All you have to do is put it in a little bit later, and then it works one of two ways. They'll feel amazing because they'll be like, I figured that out. It's that feeling of when you're watching a mystery television show like Sherlock, and you get it before he does, and you're like, yeah, I outsmarted him. Yeah. But vice versa, it also turns around and it makes your players think, man, you did this so long ago. You actually had us thinking that way. You built this. Wow, what foreshadowing! What that's incredible storytelling kind of capabilities. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I will absolutely. I might have a plan for something, and my players will bring something up, and I'll be like, "That's a lot cooler than what I had. That's what I'm going to go with," and I'll just improv it.
Yeah. So Ashley Gibson says the best DM tool, the word yes.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly that.
And again, I agree with this for about 90%, but I think that a strong no is sometimes good. But in these cases, I prefer the yes every time, I think. Well, let's go on. Only a couple more slides to go. A lot of them, actually, but okay.
We're going to make it, guys. We're going to make it.
Case says whatever causes the entire party to start... whatever caused the entire party to start implementing their unique tool sets round by round. I was slashing through the undead, a friend of mine dueled an ancient warrior, and my third member provided giant bats as an escape route. I miss them so. Rachel says one where I get to use whatever cool abilities my character has and where I don't die. And Allard says an encounter where the terrain is at least as interesting as the enemies and where fighting isn't the only option.
Yes.
It slowly starts shifting us into the direction of what we have already said something about, and that's the other options to enter combat.
Yeah. So just to, because I think that my opinion is sort of similar to, or my perfect encounter is what Allard says, is the environment is as interesting as the creature you're fighting, and there should be other ways so if you can have a conversation and finish the combat or the encounter in that way, solve it as it were, or just a full out combat encounter, I just love having options, and using the environment is a great way. Just have some levers on the walls and some ropes on the ceiling or whatever, and have people. Yeah, you can get the most creative actions from your players all of a sudden that you never expected. Sometimes players will put things together that you didn't even think about were possible, and that's always fun. I don't think it should be too. So sometimes a DM might put two levers on the wall and has a very specific thing, like if they pull that one or that one, it has to be in order. I would be careful with that, because nothing feels worse for a player than spending your turn to walk towards a lever, pulling it, and nothing happening, and then taking 3 turns to figure out you had to do it in that order. You wasted basically 3 turns by doing nothing. That's how it feels as a player. So would be careful with that. But yeah, definitely add things to the environment for people to interact with.
And make sure as the DM you're giving hints to what the answer to the puzzle is in that, because they're not going to be thinking about critical thinking at that point in time. I'll give an example. In our current campaign, the players were in a tomb, and there was 4 crystals that were in each corner of the room. They were all specifically colored for a reason, and that they were fighting this living armor at the same time. The crystals would then shoot off a bit of arcane energy and then basically imbue the living armor with that particular elemental energy. So all of a sudden, attacks would change to a water attack or a fire attack or something along those lines. So I was hinting at it already that these things have to do with the elements somehow, and you got to destroy them if you want to destroy the armor. Then they just had to think to themselves, okay, we'll try hitting it with that specific type of energy. And when that didn't work, they immediately, their first reaction was, oh, this is like Pokemon. We just have to do the adverse elemental reaction, and it worked. And that's exactly, and it was just a one-hit wonder after that. So if you're going to build those type of encounters going back to the lever, give purpose to the lever and give hints as to what it does or what the solution is, because they're not going to be thinking critically.
And always give the players something that, like, something happened. If they pull the lever and nothing immediately affects the combat, at least tell them that it made some sort of clicking noise or whatever. Like you hear mechanics click, so the players know, like, okay, we're on the right track. We just have to figure out how to do this, and then that's great.
Yeah, no, 100% agree.
The funny thing is that I got a lot from all the 100 and something answers that I got. There was only one. That I haven't included all 100 of them, by the way. There was only one that had riddles involved in the encounter. So here it says, Edward says, one of my favorite ones to run is to let the party fight the gelatinous cube with a slightly acidic water filling the room. The door is locked and the key is inside the cube, along with many other keys. They have to solve a riddle or puzzle to know which key. So this was the only one that had a riddle included in the combat, or which was surprising to me in a way.
I think this was a first or second edition encounter in a book that Matt Colville talked about in one of his videos, where there's like this 5 feet by 5 feet hallway or whatever, 10 feet hallway, and was precisely the size of a gelatinous cube. You would walk into the hallway and the doors would close and the gelatinous cube would come towards you, and you had to figure out there was this specific combination of things you had to do. Otherwise, you would be pushed back into a pit with spikes with the gelatinous cube on top of you, and it sounded like a really crazy cool encounter, but very stressful as a player to fight this thing and figure out what's going on and try to solve an actual puzzle.
Yeah, I think stacking small puzzles on top of combat, and again, you don't want to overdo it in any way, shape, or form. Like in your guys, I think it wasn't this past episode, but maybe the one before that, where your DM he wrote up that whole riddle around how to maneuver through the through the fields. Something like that is amazing for that specific encounter type, which was a puzzle encounter. But if he was to stack that on top of combat, it wouldn't have made sense, and it would have just driven, players would have got frustrated by that. So adding things where it's just like shapes, colors, something along those lines, something visually that you can hint at, adds an awesome layer of complexity to the combat without changing the difficulty rating.
Yeah. It's actually a small one thing that I'd like to add to what I did with the riddle and through the field was that it had encounters involved in it, because every time we would mess it up, we would get back into this room where these spiders would appear, and that was every time was the same room. So if we escaped that room and walked backwards, tried again, and messed up again, we would end up in that same room. More spiders would come, and it would just be like stacking, and so it gave a hint of like, oh, we shouldn't mess this up, and had combat involved. But so
I'm now going to skip through them pretty fast. Neil says, I think that player agency is the key. They can fight, talk to root, kill the commander, escape, etc. That in combination with the terrain features that you can manipulate, like toppling pillars, siege weapons, levers, can make a fight very interesting. Brandon says, basically a combat encounter is about emotion, the balance of power, and the goal of overcoming an obstacle, whether it be a lone warrior blocking your path to a city or an evildoer who openly challenges you. Combat is all about thrill and the showcase of skill rather than simply being the means to an end. The minute combat between one or more party members and the foe begins, it is a contest to see who overcomes the other through skill, tenacity, and the willingness to do what is necessary if an opportunity to win honorably presents itself. That's a long one.
Wow.
And it went on
almost
about
feels
evil
like
and everything.
it almost feels like it was written by a paladin in character.
Yeah.
Like, so, this is the oath that I've taken.
Yeah.
So
that's an amazing answer.
He reshifted where the role playing really starts to be a part of the encounter, and the investment is really a thing. So thank you for that, Brandon. I really like this answer. I hope you're watching, and if not, I hope you see it on YouTube on Thursday, probably. But let's skip over this a bit. I'm going to combine them a bit now.
I really love the answer, yeah.
Because here's Ashley, and we have to include that one. Right, Ashley? Cody says, those fights that progress the story in some crazy way, but you don't find out until like 6 sessions later, and you're just sitting there like...
Yes. Ashley, you're talking my language.
No, that's Cody. Ashley is now it's coming up. William says, the one where I get reduced to ash, but I was able to make my teammates fly and the rich dance. And Ashley says, a true moral dilemma. The bad guys are fighting, but there are also innocents mixed in. The place is on fire. So this is all about emotional investments. And Ashley, thank you for your input. I put these together because you start to feel that these people are remembering things that they experienced in the game itself, and that made the real difference for them in this Dungeons and Dragons universe. And I like when that starts to shine through these words. Maybe I'm reading into them, but I think not, Ashley. Correct me if I'm wrong. But it's kind of like where you've got the tactical grid with the different levels and the things you can push and topple and everything, and then this new film of emotions is put upon that again, and it makes it even more complex. But at the same time, you will never forget this encounter, probably, right?
Yeah. What kind of superhero are you? Are you the one who starts bashing and keeps bashing the enemy, or are you the one that takes all the innocent civilians and takes them outside of the building?
We started to think we may be the bad guys and had a full moral dilemma mid-combat as the enemy were getting the innocents out.
Yeah, wow.
That's cool.
Oh, that's an interesting one,
Yeah.
Huh.
Well,
that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the DC movies and everything, but the one where they got the Justice League kind of together, and there was this strange scene where the only thing the Flash did was running in and out of a building to save everyone in there. And I thought that was such a great, strange scene, because you never see that in the movie. They are always battling the bad guys, and I thought it was a bit not so cool for the Flash to have that role. But when you would put that in a Dungeons and Dragons game, you know that person who played that character would be really invested into doing exactly that job.
Marvel did it as well.
Yeah, okay, but I remember the Flash running forward.
Those were all like amazing answers, I think. The whole, and I think you nailed it, Jasper, in the sense of you've brought them back to a point of where they're remembering something within their overall campaigns that they really enjoyed, kind of thing. And that goes back to my entire point. You want to build memories in these games. Again, what Michel was saying in terms of these, no matter if you're playing that character or not, you are actually thinking these thoughts. You are role playing in those occasions. So to be able
those
to
experiences,
exactly, those are your experiences, even if you were doing it under a different name. So I think that going back to I'm thinking back to the original sentence that you read, and I couldn't disagree more at this point.
Yeah. So Ashley is adding to the story by saying, it struck home as we were at the time naval auxiliaries on a casualty receiving ship of Afghan. Were we the bad guys? Ooh. That's some
that
some
goes
real
deep.
life.
That goes
Yeah.
deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it really that hits home then.
Yeah, it was deep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whew. What an answer, Ashley. Yeah. I'm feeling it right now. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, then it gets, real situations. Yeah.
Truth is often stranger than fiction, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's like if you want to write anything for a fantasy novel, if you want to think of any crazy politics scheme that has that you want to add to your, just look at some history books, because anything that you can imagine, it happened, and it was even worse in real life. There's these crazy stories of things that happened between kingdoms and politics and courts or in battles, and there's amazing source of inspiration that you can get there from history books.
Yeah, just try not to be depressed when you're reading it.
No.
No, true. Yeah.
So Benjamin says an encounter that's the culmination of plot events, something with stakes beyond experience points and treasure. Finally tracking down the guy who betrayed the party back when we were level 3 is a lot more exciting and engaging to me than fighting a mechanical identical foe who happens to be guarding the complex we are attacking. So to sum up the thing we are discussing right now with the investment, I think this sums it up in a different, more meta kind of way. What makes for a great encounter. And for the record, everything being said is a great encounter, but I'm just putting them in some kind of layered perspective here. And I think I'm now going to break that.
We go from like the really systematic mechanical combats into the more roleplay emotional side of these encounters. And there's no right or wrong. Like, some people just want to get into that dungeon, kick the dragon's ass, and steal that loot, and that's the fun for them. And that is a lot of fun to do. While others prefer the big build up to a specific villain to get this revenge that has been building up in this campaign for 5 years, and you just you just want to defeat this guy.
For example, there are so many different ways to play, and I always get to this example is that Matthew Colville played through The Night Below in half a year. Now, I've dungeon mastered The Night Below, which is the 2nd edition campaign. It took me... Oh, there he goes again.
There goes Dave.
Let's get him back first before I... there you go. Welcome back.
Yep. Was it 45 minutes again? Might have been.
Yeah. So it took me 6 years with almost weekly sessions of 8 hours long to play through that module.
6 years, wow.
Yeah, and I added a lot of content. I must admit that, but he does it in half a year. So the way you play the game differs greatly between.
But I feel that Matt Colville is really from the old school Dungeons & Dragons, where it's like, I want to get into that dungeon, I want to slay some monsters, I want to get that loot, I want to get out, and then on to the next. And it doesn't mean that there's he loves emotional roleplay aspects as well. So I think that he has talked about
that's really
this,
different, and he skipped through whole parts of it.
He's a very logical DM. He's very old school in terms of his style. But did you guys ever watch the Chain of Acheron?
No, no.
I've seen the first parts of the first episodes, but I was still also trying to catch up on his other videos. So
the running the game series.
Yeah, the running the game series, and creating the world, collaboratives and stuff. He plays a lot of political intrigue. He plays very logistically, where there's some elements of role playing, but it's nowhere near the same level that, say, for example, someone like Critical Role would do. And it just goes towards your point. There's no wrong answer.
It's just a matter of if your players are having fun, then you're doing it right. That's all you need to worry about.
Sigurder says, an encounter where everybody at the table, or computer these days, has a good time. And Kenny says, actually, mine is when my brother gets to play D&D and I see him get enveloped in the story, the roleplay, and combat. I love these two answers because they really sum it up, right?
Yeah, they sum it up.
That's the conclusion of all these things. And then we get, because I'm going to the next one, and this is the last slide for the topic, and we go back to Eric, and he says, this is the most fake and open-ended question of all time. The answer is any and all of them, as long as you're having fun. And I thought that was a really good way to get from the start to where we are now.
It is, man. You did a really nice job in tying it all together.
Well done. Full circle.
Yeah,
what are you,
full circle. Full circle. It had a beginning and a middle and an end and everything.
Imagine that.
It was like a complete character arc in one.
It's crazy. We had our conflict in the middle. There was that, we hit our climax at one point. Woo!
Wow, that was great.
Yeah.
By the way, I just wanted to add to what you said previously about, and this is a bit off topic, but we shouldn't do it, but I'm still going to do it. You said about Chain of Acheron that there was a lot of political intrigue and stuff, and it doesn't surprise me at all because he openly talks about his favorite campaign setting was Birthright, which is a campaign setting where you were basically the king of a country or the baron or whatever. A lot of that. The rule set in that campaign book was about how to take care of your following, your people, and how you were politically trying to make treaties to get food from this area to that area and stuff. So yeah, very logistically and. So yeah, just wanted.
And there's and again, there's lots of I would look at that. I love video games that have to do with like city building and resource management. SimCity, Civilizations, those kind of things. So to me, that's immensely interesting, and I think I would have a lot of fun at that table. But it's not for everybody, and that's okay. No. It's totally okay.
My first campaign, my first character was a 2nd edition fighter. So at 9th level, you get your followers, and at 15 or 14, you get a keep. That was built into the rules for being a fighter. Cool. Like, nice. You didn't get cleave or power attack. No, you got followers. You got a henchman, and the keep.
So I'm going to go to the end. First, I'm going to say something about what's happening in chat. I can't wait for the 2020 callbacks in 10 years. Yeah, that would be great. Esner says history. Who needs history when these days? True as well.
Yeah.
Ashley Gibson says amen, which is amen.
Amen.
R78 says, I personally don't like the room-to-room dungeons, but at the same time, I don't want to miss something either. I like that answer.
Yeah.
Then Answer says, what a full circle encounter with all your questions. Thank you. And Herr Steffe says, where's chaotic Jasper and what did you do to him? Yeah, well. And then Rar says again, they need to bring back the leadership feed. No, well, 3.5, yeah. Great show, guys, in chat. Yeah, so now I'm going to... well, let's first ask Dave. What do you think of the show so far, before we wrap up?
It's
the show, today's show, or the show in general?
No, today's show. About...
I think it was I love coming on to shows like this and doing talks around it. I think that the more exposure that we can put out into the world in terms of the behind the scenes stuff on Dungeons and Dragons, it makes it a little, the barrier of entry in some people's minds a little bit easier, where it's like, oh, these are just regular guys doing their thing. They're not Matt Mercer. They're just kind of, they're sitting around talking. So I think having a show like this and having open dialogues the way that you're having it is such a value to the overall community in general. I think that I think this show in particular wasn't anywhere near one of your best, just because you had to look at my dumb face the entire time. But
Wow.
I love what you guys are doing. I love the Precipice. I love the Voidcast talk show. And I pray and hope that you continue doing it for years to come.
Wow,
Thanks, man. Thanks for your kind words. Wow.
I must say that the experience of having you here, I was a bit anxious, to tell you the truth, about how this would go. But I think you added a great layer to the format. And
what are you doing on Tuesday in 2 weeks? Well, I think
well, you can get.
Hey, if you guys ever want me to come back and spew off a bunch of words and hold up Jasper's slides, then I'm more than happy to join.
For sure. Okay. Yeah, for sure.
I had a great time with you, Dave, and I know you're being sarcastic, but don't do yourself short. Never.
Well, it's don't just because I spit out information, don't think that I think I'm better in any way, shape, or form. I mean, it's that's the message that I put in. I'm just a person, the same as everybody else, who has his own thoughts and stuff. So don't be afraid to share those. I think there's too many times in life
you don't have to be afraid because I know I am the best. So there's no real discussion there.
Right? There was there wasn't even a debate that needed to have on that one. But it's go out, have fun, do your things, guys. Join the community. The one thing that I love about the D&D community is just the fact of how welcoming it is for anyone. No other Twitch streams would you find a place where people are this willing to bolster each other and raise each other up as much as possible. It's collaborative. D&D is collaborative. It's not just the game. It's the community. It's everything else involved. So go out, get involved, even if you just lurk for a little while, and make it your own. That's the best advice I could possibly give. Make D&D your own, and if you can do that, then you'll have an experience like none you'll ever have, and I can promise you that.
Well, well said again.
And now I have to say something that Ashley is saying again, because she's really pulling on my heartstrings this evening. It says, "Thank you all. I've learned so much about combat. I have so much to research and watch now with all of you great content that you have introduced me to. What a wonderful way to spend a Tuesday evening, basically back in lockdown."
Well, we were glad you could join us.
Yes,
I'm so happy that you're enjoying it, and that makes me happy. That's why we're doing this.
So Dave's words that he just said, combined with such a message, and two great groups of people doing these kinds of show. Be sure to visit every channel that Careful Cantrip navigates, and be sure to visit us as well. And then we end the show with the last question, with the question for the next episode, which might be a bit of a bummer. But anyway, what is the most memorable item your character has ever had? This is in Dungeons and Dragons or any other role-playing game, not in real life, because you're not a character, you're a true human being, probably. You never can be sure.
Wow, Ashley,
I was going to say, does my coffee mug count?
Subscribing. Wow.
Wow, thanks. Oh man, what a show.
It's too much, man.
What a show.
Thank you so much. That's great.
Yeah, and let's compare Max again, Dave.
Oh yeah, don't worry, my careful cantrip's coming. I'm going upstairs to talk to my marketing director right now.
Yes.
Isn't she in chat?
Careful cantrip mug.
Yeah. If she'll let me.
Apple juice tankard.
Exactly.
So, people, with that, I think we are going to... good or not, I see you next week. Well, cool. Next week is the Precipice of Dreams on Monday, and the week after that it's Parallel Projections and Talking Void again. So I hope to see you Monday then. Thank you thank you, Rar. I'm almost getting emotional and skipping words. Thank you for watching. Thank you, Dave, for being on the show. Thank you, Michel, for being on the show, but a bit less than Dave.
Fair enough.
Gentlemen, it was my pleasure. I had a great time chatting with you.
Next week, we'll probably have Eric here, unless that shifts around. I don't know, but we'll see. And thank you so much, chat. It was a great evening, and see you next time.
Thank you all. Stay safe.